All right, let's dive in. Today, we're talking about what might just be the greatest rivalry in all history. We're going way back to the late 12th century, to the Holy Land, where two absolute legends, a warrior king and a brilliant sultan, are about to collide in a spectacular clash of empires, faiths, and most of all, personalities.
And that really gets to the heart of what we're exploring today. On one side, you've got this ferocious warrior king. On the other, a genius, tactical sultan. They're locked in a brutal, bloody holy war. So how in the world did this all-out conflict lead not just to a truce, but to this legendary, almost unbelievable respect between them? Let's get into it.
Okay, so to really get what's going on, we need to set the stage. In 1187, Saladin lands this devastating blow on the Crusaders at the Battle of Hattin and manages to recapture Jerusalem. Huge deal. As you can imagine, this prompts the Pope to call for a Third Crusade. By 1189, the Crusaders are just bogs down in this grueling, miserable siege at the port city of Acre. And then, in 1191, our main character, Richard the Lionheart, the brand new King of England, finally arrives on the scene just itching for a glorious fight.
And it's right here, at the Siege of Acre, that this whole rivalry truly ignites. This isn't just another battle. This is the first major stage where these two legendary leaders and their armies are going to directly test each other's strength and will.
And man, you couldn't find two more different leaders. You've got Richard, the impulsive warrior. He's arrogant, he's driven by personal glory, but make no mistake, he is a brilliant fighter. And then there's Saladin, the patient sultan. He's wise, he's honorable, he's defending his lands, and he is an absolute master strategist. It's this total clash of personalities that makes their conflict so fascinating.
Now, even before Richard shows up, the situation at Acre is just awful. The Crusaders who are trying to besiege the city are now being besieged themselves by Saladin's army. They are literally trapped between the city walls and Saladin's forces. This whole mess drags on for 2 long years, and both sides are basically starving to death. It's just this brutal, miserable stalemate where everyone is losing.
And then Richard arrives, sick as a dog from the journey. But does that slow him down? No way. His very first message to the mighty Saladin is one of the most audacious things I've ever heard. He basically says, hey, I'm here to discuss your surrender, and then adds, oh, and by the way, can you send over some fruit? I'm not feeling so great. The sheer nerve is just incredible, and it perfectly sets the tone for their entire relationship. So after Richard recovers and helps take the city of Acre, things take a really dark and brutal turn. Negotiations over prisoners completely fall apart, and Richard, furious that a deadline was missed, decides he's going to send a message. He marches 2,700 Muslim prisoners up a hill and has them executed, one by one, in full view of Saladin's camp.
And Saladin's response? It's swift, and it's just as brutal. Enraged by what he just saw, he immediately orders the execution of his own 1,600 Christian prisoners. It is an eye for an eye. Any hint of chivalry is gone for now. This is a war of total annihilation, and their legendary rivalry has just begun in a torrent of blood.
With Acre now in Crusader hands, Richard starts marching his army south toward the city of Jaffa. And this is where the conflict completely shifts. We're moving from a static, brutal siege to a mobile battle of wits, a deadly game of chess being played out on the sands of the Holy Land. So as they're marching, Saladin's forces are constantly harassing them with these hit-and-run attacks. And this is the moment that Richard truly understands just who he's up against. He's watching Saladin's tactics, and he has this chilling realization. Wait a second, this isn't just random harassment. This is a carefully laid trap. It's all designed to bait his men into breaking formation, which would mean instant slaughter. He finally recognizes the genius of his opponent. So what does Richard do? His response is just a masterclass in battlefield command. He enforces iron discipline. For hours, his men endure a storm of arrows, and he forbids them to charge. Then, at the exact perfect moment, he gives the signal. The knights unleash this single, devastating charge that completely shatters Saladin's lines. But, and this is key, just as his men are about to chase the fleeing enemy into the woods, Richard orders them to stop, recognizing that this was Saladin's final trap.
And the result? It is an absolutely staggering, lopsided victory. Richard's army loses around 700 men. Saladin's army loses an estimated 7,000. Richard's combination of patience, discipline, and perfectly timed aggression proved to be devastatingly effective.
But here's the thing about Saladin. He's not just a fighter. He's a brilliant strategist. He knows now that he can't beat Richard in a head-to-head battle. So after the disaster at Arsuf, he completely changes his approach.
The war is no longer about big battles. It becomes a war of sabotage, of logistics, of just breaking your enemy's will. So here's his new game plan, and it's honestly genius. He starts a scorched earth campaign, destroying every single town on the way to Jerusalem. This forces Richard to stop and rebuild, wasting precious time, money, and resources. Meanwhile, the constant little attacks are just chipping away at Crusader morale. Saladin is basically betting that their own frustration and impatience will tear them apart from the inside.
And guess what? Saladin's strategy? It's working. The Crusaders are on the verge of mutiny. So, with Richard away in Acre trying to rally more troops and support, Saladin sees his opening. He launches a massive assault on the now weakly defended city of Jaffa. This is supposed to be the knockout blow.
And Jaffa falls. In just 3 days. It really looks like it's all over. But then, Richard gets word that a small group of defenders are somehow still holding out in the city's citadel. And in a moment that becomes the stuff of legend, he doesn't even hesitate. He grabs his sword, literally leaps off his ship into the water, and wades ashore to personally lead a desperate, almost suicidal counterattack.
After his heroic charge somehow retakes the city, Richard braces for the final showdown. But his army is absolutely shattered. He has, at most, maybe 2,000 men left to defend the entire city of Jaffa. And what are they up against? Well, Saladin returns with his main army, numbering around 15,000 soldiers. The odds aren't just bad, they're impossible. This final battle for Jaffa is shaping up to be a bloody last stand.
But what happens next? Well, it's something nobody could have possibly expected. This brutal, bloody conflict, which started with mass executions, is about to end with an incredible display of honor that will cement the legend of these two rivals forever.
Incredibly, against all odds, Richard's tiny force actually holds off Saladin's massive army. But the year and a half of constant fighting has finally caught up to him. Richard collapses with a terrible fever. Now, when Saladin hears this news, he doesn't celebrate. Instead, he feels it would be an unjust way for such a magnificent warrior to die. So he sends his own personal doctor, along with snow and fruit from the mountains, to help cure his greatest enemy. I mean, it's just an absolutely incredible act of chivalry.
And you know what? That single act of kindness, it breaks the whole deadlock. Both men are completely exhausted, and this incredible mutual respect has finally blossomed between them. They sign the Treaty of Jaffa, and they reach a compromise. Saladin gets to keep Jerusalem, but unarmed Christian pilgrims are granted safe passage to the city. The Crusaders get to keep their coastal cities, and a 3-year truce is declared. The Third Crusade is finally over.
And really, that's the ultimate takeaway here. Through a year and a half of trying to kill each other, these two men forged an unbreakable respect. They saw in each other not some evil monster, but a true master of their craft. To Richard, Saladin was an honorable and wise ruler. And to Saladin, Richard was, quite simply, the greatest warrior he had ever faced.
And that kind of leaves us with one last question to think about. In an age that was defined by brutal black and white holy war, is it possible that the greatest honor isn't found in actually conquering your enemy, but in finding an enemy who is truly worthy of your respect?